Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Backup Plan. My name is Meredith, and I hope that you know by now that I'm having a baby with my gay best friend because I'm saying it at the beginning of every episode. I think it's kind of obvious at this point. Exciting news. Michael is in the other room right now. That's right. He's here. We're your freezing sperm tomorrow. I'm going to go a little bit more in depth with what this whole trip has been about next week. Him and I are going to record a podcast by the end of the week so that we can just recap everything that happened. But I mean, things are moving this week. Like, it's happening. It's really happening. I am a little nervous. There may be the slightest hitch. I have a bum foot, and I've had a bum foot for a long time. I did figure skating as a kid, and then I did Irish dancing as a kid. And also, just heredity, I have bad feet. I had bunion surgery in 2021, 2022. 2021, my dad died. 2022, I got the bunion surgery in like April or May. And it was amazing. I had Lapiplasty. If you have bunions, DM me because Lapiplasty is 100% the way to go. Like, the recovery time was very little. It's a surgery that corrects the issue rather than just cosmetically fixing it. I can't recommend it enough. And if you're in the Southern California area, Dr. Ebony Vincent in Orange County and Long Beach, chef's kiss. Perfect. Anyway, I had that done, but I also have a Morton's neuroma. This is turning into a foot podcast. I was hoping that the bunion surgery would correct the neuroma, as was my podiatrist, but it actually just shifted it to a place where it feels a hell of a lot worse. So I had something called cryosurgery on the foot. So this is now the third surgery I've had on this foot. And that was a needle directly into the nerve ending that froze it. And I had that done before I went to Europe with my mom, and I didn't think it worked. It's wearing off now, and I can tell you it did work because I am in terrible pain. And the idea of putting like another 30 pounds of pregnancy weight on top of this foot that I am limping on, literally 2-3 days ago is when this started wearing off. I've made an appointment with a podiatrist. We're going tomorrow before we go to the sperm freezing appointment. And thankfully, she has recently gone through IVF herself. And so I can go to her and be like, hi, I am at the precipice of doing this. Can we fit this nerve surgery in and then I can do what I need to do? I might have to put IVF off a month, which I don't want to do. But if I do, it might push us into the Capricorn territory if the IVF takes. And that's something Michael and I are both pulling for. So I'll keep you guys up to date on that. I don't want it to get in the way, but it's also one of these things that I tried to get it taken care of before, but she went on maternity leave. And I was hoping the cryosurgery would be a more long-term fix. If worse comes to worse, I can do the cryosurgery again, but it was $400 and it only lasted like 3 months. So I would rather do the thing that'll actually get that fully taken care of. And then that'll be 4 surgeries on my right foot, but only 1 on my left foot. So anyway, now that we're done with foot surgery talk, as you guys know, I went to the Podfest Expo in Orlando, Florida. That was the end of last month. And I met some really cool folks, including Gabi Garland, who is our guest today. So she runs a podcast production company. She is an amazing person. She runs a course where she helps women get out of tough situations and kind of move into their next level, which I think is really great. You know, sometimes in addition to therapy, you need a little bit of a community to help you move into your next space. And that's what she does. And for all intents and purposes, man, she seems to be doing a really great job. And she's got personal experience because she found herself in a tough place. She found herself in an abusive relationship and had a kid, and then her partner suddenly died, and then she found herself a single mom. And as I said at the beginning of this podcast, I don't necessarily want to hold myself to only talking about women who are single mothers by choice. I think there's a lot to learn and glean from single mothers not by choice, which is what she found herself as. and she really built a community for her daughter, and her daughter is an absolute rock star. Like, I can't wait for you to hear her talk about her daughter and how wildly proud of her that she is, and also what a badass her daughter is. One of the reasons I wanted to talk to Gabby too was after being a single mother for 10 years, she put herself back out on the market and found exactly what she was looking for. And, I've said time and time again, I'm happy. I don't necessarily need somebody to come along for the ride, but if I do decide that's something I want to hear from somebody who's done it pretty successfully. So enjoy that. It's an interesting story about like really determining exactly what you're looking for and going exactly for that. Gabby can be found online at Gabi.Garland on Instagram. Gabby's also got a podcast called the Resilient Heart Podcast, which yours truly may be on there soon, where she talks to people who have taken their traumatic journeys and found like a new way through, which is kind of a little bit of what I'm doing here. So if you want to check her out online, probably the easiest way is to go to Instagram. She's Gabi.Garland, Gabigarland. She can spell. Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening this week, and see you next week with Michael. Gabby, I'm so glad you could be here. I'm so glad that we made this work. I'm so glad that we connected at PodFest. That was really fantastic.
Me too.
But before we get into it, give me a little introduction about who you are and what you do and what the joys of being a single mother when you were one.
So I am a CEO of a company that is two parts. So one part is the healing components for women specifically. So it's all Reiki, hypnosis, NLP, soul work, and shadow work to really just help women step out of old stories and into their voice and into their power. And that turned into a podcast production company. So I ended up having a ton of clients that were, stepping out of that space and into another, and then they wanted to launch a podcast. And so we just ended up kind of going with it a little over 2 years ago. And so it's just been a pretty wild ride since, but I'm having an absolute blast. So I guess that's a blessing.
What I really loved about the conversation that we had, I explained to you what this podcast was about, which was very strange at that convention, because a lot of times it's a pretty straightforward, like, oh, I have a podcast about, coming through trauma, or, oh, I have a podcast about video games. And I was like, hi, so I do a podcast where I talk about cervical mucus and my own innards. And the looks on some of the faces, especially of the gentlemen, who none of them were awful. Like every single one of them was very sweet, but I could tell we're like processing the like, how do I respond to this? I will smile.
You're like, what am I supposed to say right now?
Bless their hearts. But then when I started talking to you, you mentioned about how you've been a single mom in the past. You're happily married now. But what really resonated with me is part of the reason I started this podcast and started creating my own resources was because I couldn't find anything out there that was what I was looking for. And a lot of the single mother by choice stuff felt exclusionary of like a situation that you found yourself in. And I was like, I can learn so much from you as well. So whatever you're willing to share from your own story, by all means.
Really, it's kind of a wild story. So I met her father when I was really young. We actually met in an AOL chat room way back in the day. So yeah, I was actually working for AOL at the time. I was in one of the break rooms just hanging out. It's like you just hop into a chat room, like an 18-year-old female wants to chat, whatever.
Yeah.
Super safe, super
ASL.
safe. Yeah. And I ended up talking to him, and he got on and stayed and talked to me that whole night that I was working. I worked 5 p.m. to 2 a.m. or 5 p.m. to 2 a.m. And I ended up moving to Florida to be with him. It was unfortunately a domestic violence relationship, very, very tumultuous. He suddenly passed away when she was 4. He was killed in a motorcycle accident. And it was layers upon layers of so much of the work that I do with women is so much of the work that I wish I would have done much sooner in my life.
The same thing I'm doing, like create the resource that you didn't have.
Yeah, absolutely. And when he passed away, it was one part guilt because, if you've ever been in a domestic violence relationship or an abusive relationship in any capacity, peace is something that you don't really get to experience. And so I remember many, many, many nights praying for peace. And when he passed, then I felt awful, like I had, like I asked for peace and then he died. And
Oh
so this is my
gosh.
fault. And so there was all these layers, and I didn't really have, the emotional intelligence back then at 25 when he died to
Yeah.
unpack all of those layers and suitcases that I had carried with me because of that relationship. But there was something that was really beautiful about it is I was really young when I had my daughter. I was 21. She
Mhm.
was born a month after my 21st birthday. And
Wow.
so we literally got to grow up together. And, through this whole process of me healing and growing and changing and evolving, we've had some really tough conversations about the things that we went through together. But kind of sharing with her some of my guilt for the ways that I was not a great mother, because I wasn't. I mean, I was struggling in trauma, financial insecurity. Like there was just layers upon layers of messy, some created by myself, and some of it was just kind of environmental based upon what I had gone through. And she had the most beautiful perspective when I apologized to her for what we had gone through. Is she was like, uh, I'm really happy with who I turned out to be. And so if anything would have been different, I wouldn't be who I am. And so you don't have to feel bad for everything that we
Mm.
went through. And so it's just, I think, especially single moms get such a rap about your kids are going to be on welfare and they're going to have 75 babies and they're, never going to move out of your house. And so to get to participate and get to witness her go out into the world and blaze her own trail has been really beautiful. It's also really humbling because it's in spite of everything that she didn't have for me. And I think we joke that she was born like a 35-year-old lovely young lady when she was a baby. So
That's the same thing my parents said about me. With the exact same age, too. So, how old is she now and what is she up to now?
she's 20, she'll be 24 in June. And she, at 16, decided she wanted to be a volunteer firefighter and EMT. So she took all these certifications, and then she became a paid firefighter and EMT. And then she did that from 16 to 20. And then at 20, she went into the police academy and is now a police officer. She's training with the SWAT team, and she's going to be one of the instructors for the range, for the shooting range for the
Wow.
academy. She's a literal badass. Like
Yeah.
I raised an actual superhero.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool to watch it where I'm just like, oh my gosh, at
Yeah.
24, I was not like that. Like I was not. So
Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah.
when you were still together with her father, so were you with him for the whole 4 years before he passed?
No, it was and I think this is kind of a true statement for a lot of women that are in domestic violence relationships. You leave and then you go back, and you leave and you go back. And I think
Yeah.
statistically they say it takes about 7 times before you finally leave an abuser and be gone. And I wish that I could say that once I left, I wasn't going to go back, but I genuinely believe I would not have ever left in some capacity because one, he knew how important having a family was for me, but he
Mm-hmm.
also knew, because I grew up in a very Catholic environment, the shame that I felt for having a baby out of wedlock. And
Mm,
so it was kind of his way to draw me in to kind of trap me, which everybody
right.
else talks about girls trapping boys, and sometimes boys trap girls. And that's kind of what happened to me, honestly.
Right.
And we weren't together actually at the time. I was actually dating somebody else, but we had about a 2 week period before he died. We were actually getting along. Like we weren't, we would sometimes get on the phone and scream at each other and hang up. Like it was really, really toxic, really, uh, really disrespectful relationship.
Right.
And about 2 weeks, leading up to him passing away, there was like a peacefulness to our
Oh gosh, that's
dynamic.
the worst. That's
Yeah,
oh my god.
it was it was, but then at the same time, it was like at least we weren't throwing down when he died. Like there was a
Yeah.
part of me that was like, "That's sad," but then there was another part of me that I think I would have felt even worse if I was like the last thing I ever said to him was absolutely hateful.
Mm-hmm.
Then I think I would have been an extra layer of unpacking and therapy that I would have had to go through
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
figure those conversations and that understanding out.
Wow.
Yeah.
So after he passed, what was your living situation at that time? Like when did it hit you that like I'm a single mother now and how did you react? Like what was your first kind of knee jerk?
Um, my first one was kind of horror, to be honest with you. It was a
Yeah.
pretty devastating thing. I had already gone to bed, and I was actually living with my parents at the time, and he was out, and I had talked to him earlier that day, actually. We
Mhm.
used to buy and sell cars from auction when we were together.
Mhm.
And so he was picking up a motorcycle and he was going to drop it off at one of the storages, and then someone was going to come purchase it. And he was hit when he was on the motorcycle and actually died shortly after. It wasn't anything, it was like, go to see him. And the thing that I think was the hardest about it, and it was trying to understand, was I needed to see that he was actually dead. I know that probably sounds super morbid,
No, I
but
do.
when you have been manipulated and gaslit and abused and um, tortured, like, I mean, it was really
Yeah.
like he was a very not kind man. And when he passed away, my daughter and I flew to Florida for his funeral. And I didn't let her see him because the terms of the accident, he did not look like himself in the face.
Mhm.
But his hands will always stand out to me because his hands were so big and so strong. And it was
Yeah.
one of those, like, I needed to see that for me to know that I was really at peace at that point. Like, he was gone. We weren't going to be um, running anymore. We weren't going to be hiding from him. We weren't going to be
Right.
having to go back and forth to court. So it was a lot. I don't think that I understood until much later all the emotions that were kind of wrapped up in those years spent with him.
Yeah. That's absolutely
Yeah.
wild. So, I mean, at least
Yeah.
you were with your family and you had a
Hmm.
place that you don't have to worry about switching locations or anything like that. So at least you had that. But how long would you say that you really felt and were a single mother? Because I know you're happily married now. So when did you meet your husband now?
So my daughter was, that was 2013, 2014 when we met. So she was 14.
Okay.
And so she was already, like, like I said, she was already a grown woman.
Yeah.
But we actually met online. And so he didn't even meet her till about a year and a half after we met.
Hmm.
I was just very, like, guarded when it came to her, as far as, it wasn't because I was worried about him specifically, but it's just, I think a lot of times single moms will, because we want to be with somebody. I made this mistake myself where it's like, nobody wants to be lonely. Nobody wants to feel like they don't have anybody who loves them or to come home to. And too often, especially for single moms, especially when you go through any type of domestic violence or an abusive or
Yeah.
just an unhealthy relationship, you end up getting these unhealthy attachments to people, and to you miss a lot of red flags, and
Yeah.
it's just like, just because I want someone to love me, I'm surrendering so much of what I need to be mindful of. And I think the the sad part of it was, one, I made it take longer for me to get better and be happy. But two, at 4, it wasn't really that different when he died, because he wasn't allowed to keep her by himself.
Mm.
We didn't, there was, like, the trade-offs of her was with through my father. And so it was very distanced. And so I did that by design, just for her protection.
Sure. Sure.
And
Yeah.
then when he died, it was like, okay, well, it was still really difficult to obviously tell your child that her father is dead, because she's 4 and she understands. But she also later, we had conversations about things that she actually saw, and I understood so much more of what I thought I had shielded her from, that she actually experienced. And so
Mm.
it was, it's peace. It really is peace. And people
Yeah.
are always like, oh, he's dead. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Like, that is God's protection. That is God's blessing, because it was a really hard many years with him.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
when you say that you wanted to protect her and that you didn't want to give up a piece of yourself, like I totally get that. I guess, please excuse my cat. He's very interested in the conversation as well. I keep very gently pushing him this way, but he just really wants to get in the camera. How long did it take for you? Was dating a priority? Was meeting somebody a priority? And if so, when did that become a priority?
Uh, I dated a little bit, but I also understood fairly quickly that my version of what a relationship was supposed to look like was clearly not what normal behavior was.
Mm.
I didn't understand, like, to give you an example, because I had been so used to literally physically getting into fistfights with this man. If like I was dating somebody, the guy that I was dating when he actually passed away, if he would do something that would irritate me, I would literally just backhand him.
Oh,
And it was just a natural reaction. It was just like a reflex. And I remember one night he pulled me aside and he was like, and I did that, and he like grabbed both my hands. He's like, people don't do this. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm not doing anything. He was like, people don't smack them other people when they don't like what they
yeah.
say or their joke. He's like, that's not normal. And I was like,
No.
huh. So I ended up going to anger management and trying to figure out initially, like, kind of what was even going on with me. So
Right.
it's been, I was single, I had a couple relationships here and there, a couple um really great guys that I met, and I would do everything in my humanly power to run them away, because if you
Yeah.
know anything about trauma, when something is safe and you're used to chaos, then
Yeah.
you create chaos in a safe environment, or you do what I did, and I would just tuck tail and run. And
Yeah.
so I think when you think about being a single mom, there's a protection piece that I feel like is essential for moms. Uh, you can't open up the newspaper and see a single mom that made a really great guy from work, and then she moves in with him because it's easier to have two people in the house and he can help with the child, and then they end up killing these babies. And I think this happens, like, those ones always give me a visceral reaction, because I know that feeling of wanting so much to have somebody to love you and to be happy and to have a family, and then surrendering yourself to environments that are unhealthy, and
Yeah.
then your kids end up paying that price, or women get stuck in these different cycles. And um, single mom life is not for the faint of heart, but I also think there are so many blessings of it too that people don't realize, where it's like, I never had to really share her. She wasn't
Yeah.
anybody else's but mine. So it was
Yeah.
like, any decision, that's mom, like, I got it.
I know. I'm so
And
glad I don't have to compromise with anybody.
yeah, no.
I mean, for me, obviously, I'm coming from a place of extreme privilege of, being able to do this because it's my choice and because,
Yeah,
I have the support of my mother ready to go and I have the support of my friend ready to donate and everything. So I'm so, so, so blessed, incredibly
no.
blessed.
It's
Um,
beautiful. I love it. Like, I loved your story when you were telling me, and you were
Thank
probably
you.
like, "Why is she so excited?" I'm like, "No, I freaking love this. Like, this is
Yeah.
amazing."
It's a best case scenario and it's something I'm really happy of and proud of. And I have so many people that are like, don't worry, you'll find a guy. And I'm like, or I don't, or like that's not a part of the equation. That's not a part that I'm like, he's not even concerned about it, this little cat over here. But I just what I'm kind of looking into the future with you a little bit. Just like you are with somebody that you're incredibly happy with. You've had another
Mhm,
child who is how old?
mhm. He'll be 5 in next month.
Was your relationship with him totally different? Like when you met him, was it just, this is what it's supposed to be? I feel safe. I feel happy. Like, were you seeking him or was it just some divine plan?
Well, it's kind of funny. So I was in network marketing at the time, so I had the kind of the flexibility to be able to work from anywhere. And it was my daughter's 13th birthday, I believe. Yes, 13th birthday. And I had decided I was going to take my daughter and her two best friends on a birthday trip to Denver. We lived in New Mexico at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like a whole road trip, and I got them their own hotel room. I was right across the hall from them, so they could have like their girls' night and jump on the bed and do whatever. And we were out on the hotel had a roof deck pool, and we're sitting out on the roof deck pool, and we were just talking about their lives, like, what do you guys want to do when school's not that, college is not that far away, and just listening to them talk about what they wanted to do when they were done with school and when they were moving on. And both two of them said, one is still really close with my daughter, and then my daughter, they were both like, what are you going to do when we're gone? Like, you're all by yourself. And I think it was the first moment that I was like, oh, they're like actually worried that I'm not like coupled. Like, she didn't want to leave, and then I'm all by myself, and then she's like, no, what do we, now you're all by yourself.
Right, right.
And it was so funny, because that night, I was in my hotel room, and I was just like, I ended up on this dating app,
Mm-hmm.
and I hadn't put any pictures. I just
How many
registered,
glasses
and
of
then I
wine in are you?
Oh, for sure. Like at least two to three vodka tonics were involved before that
Yes.
profile got
Yes,
created.
ma'am.
And then I fell asleep and I like woke up the next morning and it was like so and so met the love of their life on blah blah blah. And I was like, screw so and so. And I like took the profile down. And then we had another conversation when we were there because I'd taken him out to dinner and I made him all dress up. And so walking, they're probably like trying to figure out, does she have like three kids that are the same age? They all look completely different. And we walked through the restaurant, but we're all dressed up and everybody followed us when we were walking through. Their eyes were following us. And then one of the bartenders and another waiter came up, was hitting on me. And they were like, see, we don't want you to be by yourself. Let's find you a boyfriend. And then that night I got on that website and put my pictures up. And that night I pulled up, like I normally what I would do is I would uh, get online. I'm like, I'm attractive enough. Like I get online, I
Mhm.
put a couple of pictures and see
Yeah.
who messages me and then kind of filter through to find who I was interested in. And what I did is I actually did a search for what I was looking for. Some parameters, like I admittedly wanted someone over 6 foot. My husband's almost 6'4", and I did a search, and the search comes up like this, and the very top right hand corner was a picture of him, and I was like, "That's my husband." I don't know where the thought came from. I don't know where the nothing, and I was just like, "That's my husband." And I sent him like a little like flirt chat or whatever, and then we ended up getting on the phone that night, and
Wow.
our first phone conversation was like 5 hours long, and then it was like 2 weeks later he flew out to see me, and we broke up, got back together, and long distance is hard, but I moved here in 2016 and we got married in 2017. So
Wow.
yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy, crazy.
Yeah. And now you've got a little boy too, and
Yeah.
that's like you have the family that you were looking for. So that's
Yeah.
so nice. I'm so
It never
happy for
comes
you.
in the yeah, it never comes in the package that you want. It never, comes in the time frame that you want because I think too often we think it's got to look just like this. And I
Yeah.
think once I surrendered to like this is who it's supposed to be and then let's just see how that looks for us. Um, we're able to create a really beautiful life together. And our little boy he is feral and he is wild and he is so freaking cute, but he's so much fun and it's fun. It was a huge shift. Was not great at co-parenting because never had to do it. So
Mhm.
that was an adjustment. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's a tough one.
I think I think too about when I was younger and coming out of college and stuff and seeing folks that were getting married really young. The thing you're supposed to do is like you go to
Mhm.
college, you meet somebody or whatever. Um, it isn't. It wasn't anything I ever actually wanted. Like when I looked back and I said like, was I supposed to do that? Should I have worked harder to find a relationship? There's nothing I could do to work harder at that. Like what I could have gone on more dating apps or whatever. But um, I'm so glad I didn't have the life that I thought I was supposed to, or that I just kind of
Mhm.
was. And I don't think I'm beholden to society. Like I think I'm a pretty freewheeling person, but there are these like markers that you see, and I didn't fit into them anywhere in there. And I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad it didn't work out that way. And yeah, I have a friend who she is a single mother now, and she has her mother and brother live nearby. One, her mom's with her, brother's really close nearby, and she always talks about being in an orca pod, and that
Wow.
and that she has her orca pod, she has her support system, and she's like, if I find somebody who fits into this, great, perfect,
All
like
about it.
we'll
Yeah.
do that, but um, rather than forcing some kind of specific idea of something, to find something that works with where you're at and what you're doing, I think is so strong and powerful.
No, I do. And I think too, there's also this like, I think we talked a little bit about it when we talked before was there's such a, like when you like, we always joke that my daughter was a community kid. I come from a really, I'm adopted, but I come from the family that raised me was a really big Hispanic family and most of them lived in our town. And so when we moved back home from Atlanta, to back home to my hometown, she had uncles and cousins and aunts and people that I've known and grown up with my whole life there to just pour love into her. And I think when you look at a single mom environment, the best thing that you can do for your babies, whether they're male or female, is give them positive role models that are examples for them to learn from, grow from, to take them out and show them what the world's supposed to look like and really be somebody that pours into them. And I think the reason why she is who she is really very little to do with me, to be honest with you. I don't believe that. Of course, I have a part in it. I was her only
I think you
parent,
were a pretty good North Star, it sounds like.
but the everybody around her was loving. Like she
Right.
got just there was no lack in her life because she didn't have him. I feel like so many of my I have an older brother and a little brother, and I have uncles that were really close with her, and my dad and I are close. So she always had these really strong male role models that just thought she hung the moon. So she was never lacking that. And I think um, there isn't I don't think family has to look a certain way. I really don't, especially as someone who's adopted. I think beautiful people can come from whatever environment they grow in. And
Hmm.
when people are judgmental of single moms or different decisions, I think if you sat down and listened to why these circumstances happen for people, if you choose kindness, then you don't have to be judgmental. You can just let people live their lives.
Yeah.
So,
So you had a lot of family around, but who were your main orcas? who
um,
who were the folks you relied on the most?
Well, when I lived in Atlanta, I actually worked for Best Buy, and I literally created kind of my own community with my really good friends there. So that was our Orca community back then. I
Hmm.
was probably one of the older ones. I was the only one that had kids, but like my guy friends would literally go like, "Oh, you're working late," so like they'd take her to the mall. They're like, "She's better than a puppy." I met so many girls, and I was like, "I'm hanging out with my friend's little daughter and taking her for ice cream." And so I got really good at finding beautiful people to have in her life. And then my kind of long-term orca was my parents. They were really kind of the foundation of what we spent the most time with. And they, they've she was I was 21 when I had her, so they were pretty young when she was born. And
Yeah.
so she's kind of, she's like an extension of the fam. And it's cool to see. I remember the very first Christmas, my brother was like, I don't know what we did before she was here. I was like, Christmas was definitely not nearly this fun.
Yeah.
Like it was,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was not.
Yeah, I think too that, not to knock on traditional relationships, but I think that this way of life really does make you work hard to give your kid a well-rounded, like, it's such an intentional thing. And
Mhm.
I kind of think back to, I was homeschooled between sixth grade and high school graduation. And if you can't tell, I'm a social butterfly. I had to find situations to be social in. I did theater, I did dance. My mom was amazing. She like put together homeschool dances for us. We had 60 kids at one of them, and I mean this was back
Oh
in
my gosh.
2002 when it really wasn't
Wow.
as prolific as it is now. And I always tell people, like, I didn't make friends based on convenience. I made friends with people because I had genuine interest in spending time with them, and I was genuinely meeting them in environments that suited me. And that's probably why I'm the way I am now. It's probably why I'm so comfortable in this environment and creating this life that I'm happy and thrilled with. And everything that you just said kind of resonated with me in that same way of like, you gave your kid such a beautiful community because you had to, and kudos to you on that.
No, I think it is, and it's not as scary as everybody says. I think had I been more financially secure, I would not have had a lot of the struggles that I had. Being really young, I was a high school dropout, so I definitely kind of came into it not in the greatest of situations. But it's despite all of that, she turned out to be like the literal best human, and so I'm like, it was all worth it.
Yeah, how do your kids get along? There's a big
Um,
age gap.
yeah, 19 years is there's a little bit of an age gap. I he she comes out. So we were home for Christmas, and he is nonverbal. He is diagnosed with autism
Mm.
about 6 or 8 months ago, and so he's not verbal in terms of like he's gonna like, hey big sister, but he's it's so interesting their dynamic because she'll always, I mean, she's got a good job, so she buys him all the good toys. Like,
Oh my gosh.
she bought him like this freaking fire truck that was like the loudest thing in the world. She would sit in my office and push the buttons. I was like, it was horrible. I was like, you don't even love me that you buy this toy for him. Like, what are you doing? But they have like she'll buy these cozy things. Like one of them, when I was actually pregnant, she bought this little monkey that you can warm it up in the oven
Oh, I've
or
seen that.
in the microwave. That's, have you seen it? It's like it's got like beans in their tummy
Yeah.
and it's got like aromatherapy in it. She bought him one of those when I was pregnant, and that is his cozy. We've had to swap it because he like chews on it and it gets gross, and so we have to swap it out with a new
Right.
one. But every toy that she's gotten him that's like a cozy, that becomes his cozy.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting how everybody will give him all these different things, but he gravitates to the things from Big Sister, and he doesn't even necessarily know it comes from her. And so there's this really cool connection with them that, one, it's really fun to watch, and two, we were joking tonight. It's like she's going to end up being kind of, we were out at dinner and there was a big sister and a little brother that were sitting in the table behind us. Of course, I'm like, being nosy, listening to the conversation, because they were telling the waitress that he had just gotten accepted to some colleges. He's graduating from high school, and she was taking him out to Outback to just to celebrate what he was doing. And I was like, that's going to be like my daughter and Squish. And my husband's like, yeah. It's like, there's such an age gap that he's gonna always have somebody that's gonna be able to like be there for him forever, because she's so much older than him.
How,
Um,
I mean, how wild is it? Because she's nearly the same age you were when you had her. So, what, I mean, that must be a real sort of, forgive me for saying, but mind fuck to watch.
oh, absolutely. And every time I tell people, they're like, oh, you must like, that's crazy. You were done. And the thing was that I knew I wanted to have a baby with somebody. Like I wanted to like be in love. Like I want to know what it's like to
Mm-hmm.
have somebody that wants to go to appointments with me and is like excited to go baby shopping and all of those things. And so getting to experience that with somebody that I love, that is literally the best dad I could have ever freaking picked, um, is such a cool blessing. But getting to for her to get to see that healthy dynamic as well. Like she saw me healthier, single and happy, and then now she gets to see me healthy and happily married. And I think those are really beautiful for her to get to see. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're still providing her with guidance. Like, it doesn't stop when
yeah,
they're, you know,
no.
18. Like, it keeps going. And I think that's so,
Mhm.
so beautiful.
I'm like changing diapers and giving like, career life decisions to my 24-year-old, almost 23, 24-year-old. It is absolutely a mind fuck. But it's so much fun. And I'm such a different mom now than I was back then for her. So
Yeah.
it's cool to know I'm a better mom for everybody than I was
Yeah.
back then.
But I mean, that's how we are as, I mean, as humans, though. We keep hopefully growing and enhancing
yeah,
as
that's
time
the
goes on.
goal.
Yeah. Yeah. We
Yeah.
hope. We hope. Um, when did you have a period of time when she was growing up where you looked and you saw her, and I mean, maybe you never had this moment, but did you ever have like a light bulb moment where you were like, she's gonna be okay?
Yeah, there was a couple different moments. So this was like seventh grade, and we had just gotten over like some bully situations at school. And she was the bully, so we had to deal with that. But it was really also, I was literally telling a girlfriend about this today. Like part of what I learned at that time is she was learning from me how to behave, and
Mm,
how I was behaving was not attractive. And so she was learning that. And so one, it was a gut check for me to get myself together. And two, it was an opportunity for us to sit down and talk through why that behavior is there. And then now I forgot the question that you asked me.
when did you see when did you see that this was a success story, that she was
So,
gonna
oh
do
yeah, so
fine?
like shortly after that, there was a little girl that was getting bullied on Facebook, and she messaged her directly, and she was like, "Hey, I just wanted to tell you, like, not everybody hates you. Like, if you want somebody to sit with, like, I'll sit with you." Like, I got to see here's where we messing up. Here's where I'm messing up. Here's where I need to adjust my behavior. Here's you adjust your behavior, and then here's how we need to behave. And then getting to watch the application of it,
Yeah.
and she was like, "Oh wow." And there was that one was a big moment. And then there was another one where she was in high school, and she wanted to apply for this position, this role in the play. It was like the lead in one of the plays. And I guess some of the bigger roles, they're like, you have to be in there for a certain amount of time, or you got
Mm.
to kind of pay your dues. And she was literally perfect for this role. And we had gone out to dinner with my dad, and we were sitting there, and she was like, I really want whatever the role was. I can't remember the name of the role. And she was like, I want to ask her. And I was like, well, do it. And she was like, but what if she says no? I was like, what if she says no? But what if she says yes?
Yeah.
And she did it. And it was like, that I feel like kind of unlocked for her, like, it's okay if it doesn't work out, but if you want something, you got to at least get yourself in there and see what happens. And I joke that I made her a little too fearless because she's a cop and SWAT and all of the things.
Oh yeah.
Um, but it's, the world is not kind, and the world is, kind of a rough place to be. And so she's very solid. And there's one I actually will tell you, because this was literally just recently.
Uh-huh.
So she graduated from the academy, and I flew home. It was during COVID, so they had like a big COVID outbreak at the graduation, so it wasn't like the full
Oh
production.
yeah.
But I had flown home, and I was taking her to this really beautiful speakeasy steakhouse that we love. And we took an Uber over there so we could both have some drinks, because she's old enough to drink, which is still weird. And we got back to her house, and she lives in this really cute little 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. And we weren't in the house 15 minutes. We had gotten changed, and I was walking into the bedroom I was staying in, and she brings in this tomahawk, and she's like, here, just keep this by your bed. Cause New Mexico's kind of crazy. And I was like, okay, that's random. And so I put it by the bed, and then she went across to her room, and I'm laying there, and I hear just pop, 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 pop. You just heard like a whole series of gunshots. And I was like, and it was close. And I remember thinking, holy shit. And she comes in like, and I'm like, I could feel my adrenaline going, because it was that close. And she walks in, she's like, okay, mom. She's like, I don't know where those are coming from. Can you go ahead and turn the kitchen light off? Like, this is literally the tone she's talking to me in. She turns on her radio, and she logs into the system to see where the shots were at.
Right.
Got her gun, loaded it, gave me the other gun. And I'm just sitting here like, I am a grown mom, and she was so chill. And I'm like, even in this environment, she's going to be okay, because I literally got to see her tone, demeanor, all of it, absolute calm, just hearing all these gunshots. And I was like, okay, she's going to be okay.
Oh
Like,
my gosh.
she's going to be okay, which was terrifying for me. I'm like, oh my God, like, I'm freaking out. And she was like,
Maybe rent somewhere else.
yeah. I'm like, seriously. And New Mexico, unfortunately, is got a lot of bad pockets. It's a
Mm.
pretty high crime city, but she, she loves what she does, and she's really good at it. So I just gotta be supportive and cheer her on.
Right. So you live pretty far away now because you're in Virginia.
Yeah. Yeah. I just literally just got off the phone with her. She's coming out here to go see a comedy concert in April. So I'll
Mm.
get to see her soon.
Yeah. How often do you guys see each other, or how often are you traveling?
At least 3 to 4 times a year.
Okay.
During COVID, we didn't get to, because she was actually a first responder at the
Oh my
time, and with a
gosh.
little brother that has a heart condition, we literally didn't see each other for about 2.5 years, which was
Uh,
absolutely brutal.
uh,
Yeah, that that one broke me very
yeah.
much. That
Well,
was really, really hard.
obviously, thank her on behalf of everybody. Like, that's like
Yeah,
absolutely wonderful what she's doing, what she's done and given.
yeah, it's very cool.
As I draw this into a close here, I've given you my story. You know where I'm at. We had a lot of time to talk in between panels, but do you have any
Yeah,
advice? Like, what should I be prepared for? I'm
I
starting
think that.
IVF. This next cycle is when I will start preparing for it. So it's coming up.
Well, I'm going to be like in your DMs, be like, oh my gosh, what's
Yeah.
going on? I want
Yeah.
all the tea.
Yeah. And Michael,
Is it a boy or a girl, so that I can send you a picture, or get you guys a gift? If it's a
um,
girl, it's going to be something sparkly. Just full disclosure, that's how I
if
roll.
it's a boy, it should be something sparkly too. I mean, that's
I
it.
mean, I'm not objective to that either.
Yeah, Michael is coming on Sunday, and he's gonna be freezing. So
That's
excited.
so
So
exciting.
yeah, I'm here for any advice anybody has to give.
I think the thing of almost 24 years of being a mom, and doing a lot of things really well, and doing things horribly wrong in other situations, I think the most beautiful gift you can give them is honesty.
Mm.
Because I think, and honesty not in like an oversharing aspect, but apology and honesty. Because I think too often as parents, it's always the do as I say, not as I do,
Mm.
or just because I said so. Like, they're going to learn from what you do, not what you tell them.
Right.
And so anytime she was doing something that was difficult, like it was literally a moment where I had to sit with myself and go, okay, what am I mirroring that I'm getting to see back from my behavior? And especially in babies, like the more peaceful you are, the more happy you are, like there is just an environment that grows for them that you can't you can't replicate that. And being able to, one of the things my daughter's always like, you always like, it doesn't matter what she's doing, doesn't matter where she's at, doesn't matter what she looks like. I'm just like, you're the most beautiful, you're the most smart, you're the most, because the world will do enough to tell them that they're not. And so I
Yeah.
think one of the things that I did really well was build her up to the point that no one was going to be able to break her. And she knew who she was. She was strong in her beliefs, and she was really, she knew that serving others and being a good person was important.
Right.
And so I think as a mom, um, whatever whatever you do, everything has to be around how do I raise the best human that I can, and put them around all different types of people.
Mhm.
The array of people that she has grown up with from me, from the LGBTQ community to every race under the sun. And
Mhm.
so she's never looked at the world without that lens. And I think every single person that was different from who we were poured something a little different into her. And I think that's such a beautiful blessing for them. Um, and the other thing is just freaking have fun. I
Yeah.
think the two I was it's cool to get to do this now. But one of the things that I am acutely aware of, even with my son at 5, is there's gonna be a last night that he doesn't want to be rocked to bed. And
Mhm.
so even on the nights when life is a little crazy, I try to always make time during the week to at least have a couple of nights that I'm rocking him to bed, because it really is so wild. Everybody's always like, "Oh, it goes fast," but like once you're in it, you're like, his birthday's in
Yeah.
next month, and it's gonna be 5, and I'm like, where did 5 years go?
Yeah.
And on one hand, it feels like a lifetime, and on the other hand, it's like he was just a baby like 4 days ago. Like, what
Yeah.
is happening?
Well, I mean,
Um,
the way that time shifts the older you get, like, I did a lot of babysitting when I was a kid. I was the neighborhood babysitter.
yeah,
And
same.
those kids just felt like babies forever. And I remember getting kind of like burnt out on like the laying on the floor and playing with toys and like how long does it take to get them to sleep? And it all seemed to be like such a permanent spot. It was like they are children who don't want to go to bed, and that's who they are, and that's where we're at. And like that same baby now she's out of college. I don't know where she's at. I don't want to look up online because it's kind of horrifying to know that she's that
No.
old now. But my nephew was born during COVID, and he is turning 4 this year in just a few months. And
Yeah.
I I love spending time with my nephew and doing the absolute most mundane things. And I know it's like I have the luxury of just being around him when he's fun and not when he's throwing his tantrum.
Yeah, you're like, "Oh, have your kid back."
But he's such a gentle little soul, and I love like cleaning up his toys with him, and I love reading him another book, and I love like all of those moments. And he was just a baby like last week, and now he's not. And I think that was another reason I was like, I gotta do this because it is fleeting. It's gone so fast. And so that's why it's not even like it's different than a biological clock ticking. I mean, I guess it is, but it's just ticking in a way I didn't expect. So
No, I
yeah.
get it, and I can totally resonate with the thought of, like, getting married wasn't really my thing. Like, I was like you, I was like, "I wanna have, like, 9 babies and live in Parkwood." That's what I told my parents. My dad was like, "Well, where's your husband?" I was like, "Oh, I'm not gonna have a husband." He was, like, mortified, absolutely mortified. So I think, being a mom is literally, of all the things I get to do, and I love being a CEO, I love owning a company, I love having a whole team, but being a mom is like, what there's nothing like it. And I
Yeah.
think, it's not everybody's path, but when you know that it's your path, like it is, there there's nothing to explain the moment that you get to see your baby, and like the minute you like, your heart will just melt into a puddle, and I don't think it ever goes back. Like
Yeah.
I think
Yeah. I
it
think it's
just lives
something
outside of your body.
if you are called to it, you should do it. And if you're not called to it, you shouldn't do it. I think that's the flip side of that coin. Because I've seen a lot of people who don't want to be parents who are, and it's troubling. So
Yeah.
I think that is just as important a story as to say, like, if you don't want to do it, that's okay. Because there are people who do, and
Yeah.
we'll raise the good ones. Well, before you go,
Yeah.
what would you like to
Yes.
plug? What do you do? Where can people find you?
The easiest place to find me is either Instagram or Facebook. All same name, Gabi Garland, Gabi Garland. So like I said, I do own a podcast production company. I do have a me-season program, which is literally the 6-month framework that got me from a girl that was fighting in the bars, being messy, getting drunk, being really embarrassing in public and in private, to somebody that is really happy, really confident, and really whole as a human. And so I'm really excited about that program. I have a group that's going right now. The next one starts actually in March. And podcast production. The thing that I don't think I knew, and I know you probably can resonate with this too, is there is so much peace to being able to just own your story and stand in it. And I think too often as women, if our story doesn't look like what it's supposed to look like, people look at us a certain type of way. And so getting to help women create beautiful podcasts that are able to let them share their story, their expertise, and all the things that they do in the world is such a huge blessing. And my team and I love it. And so even if it's just getting on some of the podcasts, like I tell people, like of all the things I've ever done in my life, and I've had a pretty cool career, being a podcast producer and getting to do the work that I do with women is like, it's everything. It's a gift to get to do what I get to do.
Good for you. Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much, Gabi, for joining. And
no, thank you.
Everybody, check out your shit.
Thank you, lady. It was great to talk to you.
The Backup Plan is created, produced, and hosted by me, Meredith Kate. Julian Hagans is my co-producer. You can find us on social media at Backup Plan Pod. The best place to get updates is to sign up for our newsletter at backupplanpod.com, where we also post all episodes, show notes, and transcripts. Thank you for listening.